Hi, and welcome to Origin of Concepts. In this episode, we will talk about this guy up here, Jesus Christ from the biblical mythology. I don't think he needs a deeper introduction, but Jesus Christ is the central figure of Christianity, believed to be the incarnated Son of God and the Savior of the world, or more specific, the light of the world. And just to mention it, he is like the 10th generation or 10th version of earlier characters like him. So there's nothing new about Jesus. So now we know that. And the biblical Jesus is of course a fictional character who never existed as a real person. And no matter what historians or people are saying, it's not possible. There has been many Jesuses out there, missionarying for the Christianity, but it's not the Jesus from the Bible. And you will find out along this video. The entire Jesus narrative is made with inspiration from the Milky Way Cinder, based on the annual falling and rising of the Milky Way. So let's jump to the Milky Way. Here we got it. Okay, this video will be a little longer than normal because Jesus is an important subject who needs that we go into the details. But I'll do it as light as possible so everybody can understand. Jesus represents the light of the disk, the manifested spirit, and the striped shadow in the center of the Milky Way, which is his flesh, so to speak. And let me draw it for you. The entire story about Jesus is about the spirit emanating from the golden light of the disk in the Milky Way Cinder. And of course it runs down through the striped shadow here, the flesh of Jesus. So this is the physical incarnation of the Son, so to speak. Physical manifestation of spirit, the light of the world. Jesus' life corresponds to the cycle from around the winter solstice to shortly before the summer solstice. During this time, the Milky Way races from horizontal to vertical, and that's the life of Jesus. So let's take a look at that. The light of the world is the spirit, as I just mentioned, and it's visualized by the disk in the Milky Way Cinder. So we have to keep an eye where we can find the divine light from the disk in the annual cycle. But before we go there, let's start with the Jesus gesture. And if you look at the image here in the corner, you can see he's pointing one hand up and another hand into his heart. So let's try to figure out what that's about. Jesus standing with one hand in his heart and the other raising or pointing up. The gesture is a mirror of the dark shadow surrounding the Milky Way Cinder. The hand on the heart is the striped shadow. So here you have to imagine his shoulders. This is always the shoulders. And here he is pointing with his hands into the heart. Yeah, sorry, I'm not that good for hands. So here you got the heart, of course. The spirit inside the human. And the other hand is like the dark shadow here, raising up. Maybe I should do like this. And here is the other shoulders. he got no head, because the head is the disk in the Milky Way center. So here is like pointing up and do something like that with his hand. So here you got the posture. Every single posture known to humanity, or most of them, is based on the Milky Way center. I'll get into that in another video about gestures. And then let's move to the birth of Christ, because Jesus is born by Virgin Mary in a cave in Bethlehem, and is led in swaddling clothes in a crib. And Bethlehem is an allegory of the striped shadow here in the Milky Way center, with all the towns and towers and stuff, and the city wall and stuff like that. But you can check out my Bethlehem video to get deeper into that detail. The cave just outside Bethlehem is the area around the disc, the arch here. This is the cave inside the mountain here. So that's where Jesus is born. And let me go back here. And Virgin Mary, I'll pick up a new color here. And Virgin Mary is visualized by the silvery shadow with a female posture. And I'll make it here. Most of you already know this if you have seen my other videos. This is the female posture, standing here. And she also got her womb here is the silver crescent. The striped shadow here is the silver crescent, and that's why the mother figures in the worldwide mythologies always is depicted with the, two horns or a womb or whatever. So that's the womb. And then let's go back to Jesus. I'll remove the womb again, because Jesus is inside the cave, and it's visualized by the disc here is his head, and the striped shadow here is the swaddling. This is also the mummy from Egypt, ancient Egypt. And so here you got the newborn Jesus child. And the entire, or his crib, let me do it again. You see all the stripes here is the swaddling. And he is laying in his crib, which is, of course, the entire Milky Way center here. So, the birth of Jesus is celebrated on Christmas Eve, December 25th, just after a couple of days after the winter solstice, and is misleadingly associated with the old midwinter celebrations and return of the sun's light. But that's not quite what we're celebrating. The annual celebration of the birth of Christ on December 25th is misleadingly associated with the winter solstice celebrations and the return of the sun's light, as I just told you. In reality, the birth of Christ marks the re-emergence of the golden light from the disk in the Milky Way center, which have been hidden behind the sun's light since autumn. So, when this little fella here disappears behind the sun, Jesus is in heaven, so to speak. And when it comes back, exactly on the morning on December 25th, we celebrate the coming of the light of the world. Okay, let's talk about some of Jesus' miracles. Jesus turns water into wine. Of course he do, because this is always the water in the Milky Way. The water, every time you hear something about water, this is the still water or the pure spirit, so to speak. And he turns it into wine, which is, of course, the red light from the Milky Way, or the disk in the Milky Way center. So the water and wine is here. This is the wine. Okay. And then on his road out in the world, he meets two pairs of fishermen, Simon Peter and Andrew, and James and John, the fishers of men, or he will make them to the fishers of men. It's very important to notice that they are mentioned as brothers. It's two pair of brothers. And that's the reason for that. Because the two pair of brothers is the two pairs of stripes in the striped shadow. And they are here. This is the one pair of brothers. And here you got the second pair of brothers. So this is the fishermen. And let's see if we can back it up a little bit further. The fisher boat is the striped shadow, the crescent I just showed you before, because this is the boat from where they are fishing. And the fishing net is the same shadow. This is always the fishing net here. They are throwing out into the water to catch some souls, maybe. Okay, and let's move on. Because Jesus said, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." The fishers of men is the striped shadow here, which is also the 12 apostles, the 12 pillars in the sky. And this is the group which carries the manifested spirit into the mortal world, so to speak. It's coming out from the disc, and it must be spread into the physical world. So this is the 12 chosen disciples from Jesus. The fishers of men. They have to give wisdom to men, so to speak. Jesus calmed a violent storm. Of course he did, because the striped shadow here is always the storm, or the waves, or the water emerging from the Milky Way center. And to understand that, this is, so to speak, the divine realm here, and here's the manifestation, and everything's coming out from this point, is wind, water, and so on. A speech of God, and everything. Jesus is feeding the 5,000. Feeding is like the 5,000, first of all, is like an allegory of this. This is the 5,000, all the hungry people. And Jesus is feeding them, because the Milky Way center here is the great mouth. We just follow the outlines of the shadows here. This is the great mouth. See, it's getting feeded. So he feeds 5,000 men. And the next says, Jesus heals cripples and lepers. The cripples and lepers are represented by this striped shadow again. This is always the crowd, Jesus is meeting. All the people he helps in the mortal world. And let me see here. Yeah, I'll get further into that because he heals more than one or one group of lepers. And Jesus put his hand on the leper and cleansed him. And of course he does, because the Milky Way center here is the giant hand which originated from ancient Egypt. So here we got Jesus put his hand on the leper and cleansed him. And Jesus cleans 10 lepers in a certain village. And here you see the pink lines. As I spoke before, this is the village with all the houses and towers and stuff like that. And there's 10 lepers. So this is both the town and the people. And then Jesus enabling the lame in the bed so he can walk. And it's visualized by the man here. He is lame. And the bed you see here, he's lying in his bed. That's where they got it from. And this is not there's older myth describing the bed. So, and Jesus spat on the ground, mixed it with clay, and applied it to the blind man's eyes. The blind man went to the pool of Siloam and washed his face, regaining his sight. Okay, I'll take it bit by bit here. First of all, Jesus' spit is the striped shadow coming out of the big mouth. So here's his spit, and I'll draw it again so no one is confused. Here's the big mouth. So here you see Jesus spitting on the ground. And the clay, the spit is mixed with clay, which is also the striped shadow here. That's the clay area here. And then the blind man goes to the pool, which is, of course, the water here above the disc. And the clay washed out the eye. Let me remove that. So we only have the clay, because this is the clay and it's washed out of the big eye in the Milky Way, of course. It's also an eye and a mouth. But here you see the big eye. So he washed the clay out of the eye, and then he got his vision back. So that's nice. And there's one more spitting episode with Jesus in the New Testament. Because Jesus spit on the blind man's eye. You know, he spit him in the eye. And putting his finger in his ear and touching his tongue. So we got finger and tongue and ear we have to deal with here. So let's attack it. First of all, the finger is the striped shadow. I'll make a fingernail here just to, and some. So now you can see it's a finger. And the ear, it's basically this is the entrance to the ear. And this is the entire ear is the Milky Way center here. So now Jesus put a finger in his ear. And then he's touching his tongue. And the stripe shadow here, I'll do like this, is of course the tongue of the mouth in the Milky Way center. So, and by the way, this is also the reason why the Hindu Kali put his tongue out of her mouth, and why Rolling Stones got this logo. So now you know that too. Okay, let's move on, because Jesus raising Lazarus from the death. And Lazarus' hand and feet were bound with grave clothes, and his face was bound with a napkin in the Bible. Well, let's take a look at it, because Lazarus, the dead man, is lying here in his grave cloth, which is also the mummy, of course, from ancient Egypt. And he is laying in his grave under the pile of earth here. And the napkin over his face, well, is of course the whitish area above the disc. Or maybe I should do like this. So here you got the white napkin, or the napkin. There's nothing written about the color. And this napkin also plays the role as the wheel. The reason why we got wheels, like face coverings for weddings and everything about wheels, it comes from this area too. Jesus Christ is the chief cornerstone. Okay, let's have a look at that. Because the cornerstone or foundation stone is visualized by the stripe shadow. So this is the cornerstone here. The rock, maybe you know that expression, yeah. The rock, this is the rock, the black rock, the dark rock, all kinds of rocks. So every time you hear anything about a rock, you know where to find it. It's the striped shadow here. And the striped shadow leads the disc light, the manifested spirit into the mortal world. That's you got the rough rock, and when you cast the spirit through it, you make the rock smooth and nice, and make it a perfect foundation stone, so you have a solid fundament to build the rest of the building. Yes, and the striped shadow, yeah. And of course, it's not only the rock for a building, it's also the building block for man. So, the more spirit or wisdom you got, you more perfect your stone becomes. This is also used in the masonry, by the way. They just, pack it in the New Testament. Jesus rides into Jerusalem on a donkey. So let's find that. First of all, Jerusalem is an allegory of the striped shadow, the divine town. So this is Jerusalem here, with all the towers and houses and stuff like that. This is every single city mentioned in the Bible and other myths is this area. It's the striped shadow, the physical city or divine city in the, yeah. And then the donkey. And this donkey Jesus is riding on, standing with its foal. And the donkey is the dark shadow surrounding the Milky Way center. And let me draw it here. And then it goes up here. Got some ears. We can see it on this picture, but in real life you can see it. And here we got the donkey, and it got an eye up here somewhere. And yeah, it goes like this, and some legs here and back leg. Okay, I'm sure you see the donkey. So, and first of all, Jesus is riding the donkey. Jesus is here hanging on the back of the donkey. But the donkey also got a foal. And the foal is, of course, the same as Jesus, the striped shadow. And the striped shadow is also the rope they are tied with. So here is the striped shadow, is also the curled serpent. And it's the rope they are tied with. So here you got the donkey, Jesus on the donkey, and the foal. And then we go on to, Jesus got this aura or spirit around his head. And this is basically visualized by, let me draw, here's the head of Jesus, of course. And Jesus is manifested spirit. And what's behind him is pure spirit, the disc light. And this is the area up here, the water, the pure spirit manifested into Jesus, who pass it on to you and me, so to speak. Or maybe Jesus is just, you and me. So, yeah. Jesus, the cup, the Holy Grail, the cup of Jesus. Let me show it to you. It's always best to see it when the Milky Way is standing vertical, but I'll make it sideways here. Because the cup is standing here. This is the cup, or the Holy Grail, if you like. And it's best to see when the horizon is like this. And inside the cup we got the blood of Jesus, which is of course the red light of the Milky Way center emanating from the disk and pouring down the striped shadow or in the cup into the wine, into the physical world, so we can drink it and get some wisdom. Okay, and then here is another exciting story about Jesus, because Jesus drive out the merchants from the temple with a whip, and he turned over all the tables in the temple. God forbid, making business. Debts, business is okay, but debts, no. Okay, first of all, this is inside the temple of the Milky Way center. The dark shadows, making the inside of the temple. And we already know Jesus, and Jesus got the whip, which is the slim shadow above the disc. This is the whip. here. This shadow is the whip, and this shadow is used in many other myths before Jesus arrived in the New Testament. So here we got his whips. And then all the merchants is of course the stripes, and the stripe shadow here, standing in the temple and do what they do. And this is also the cattle, and it's the crowd of animals and the people inside the temple. And this is also the tables that Jesus is turning over. So here you got it. And then I make a note here. All the cities Jesus is visiting. Yeah, you know, on his mission, he's going through a lot of cities and do a lot of miracles. And all the cities Jesus is visiting are a plagiated and transformed concept from the 9 bows concept in ancient Egypt, which is also used for the 12 labors of Heracles in ancient Greek mythology. And it's all based on the stripes in the stripe shadow here. So this is all the, this is all the cities Jesus has to pass through, or all the steps he must go or man must go through to reach wisdom here inside the head of Jesus. So that's it. Okay, now to the crucifixion. You know, that's the most exciting part, I guess, for some. Jesus is crucified on Easter, which falls on the Sunday after the first full moon, after the spring equinox, when the Milky Way reaches its vertical position. Ta-da! Okay, so what we are talking about here, you know, we start at Christmas with the Milky Way here, and when we reach the Easter, it stands tall. And that also means that the light from the light of the world, the disk in the Milky Way center, is standing tall before it goes down back. But I'll come into that later. Jesus is crucified on the Golgotha hill, which means the place of the skull, which is just outside the city wall. Here the crowd stands and mocks Jesus and gives him wine mixed with wormwood. Okay. First of all, the Golgotha hill is the dark shadow surrounding the Milky Way center here. And it looks like a hill or a mountain in the sky. And the skull of the hill is the area. Yeah. You know, this is the skull here. And here you got the what's the name? Jawbone, of course. So that's why it's the Golgotha, the place of the skull, or inside your head, you know. And the city wall is the striped shadow here. This is the city wall, because it's just outside the city wall. Here the crowd, also the striped shadow here. This is the crowd watching at Jesus getting crucified. And then they offer him the wine with the myrrh and wormwood. And myrrh is, of course, let me put this away again. Myrrh, you know, myrrh is like, is a golden colored stuff. And this is, of course, the myrrh. It's the disc and the golden light from the center. And then he also get wormwood. Wormwood. Funny word, but that's the original translation. But this is the plank of wood here with all the worms inside, the stripes and the stripe shadow. And it's also the herbal plants they used to put in his drink. So here we got it all. It's nice they collected it all at the same spot. Then it makes it much easier to figure out. And then they, before he got crucified, he gave a crown of thorns. And of course, here we got the head of Jesus. And the crown of thorns is of course I'll make the crown here, and all the stripes here is the crown, of course, of thorns. The stripe shadow is always the area for herbs and vegetables and, trees, and it's the Garden of Eden. So it's here all the plants grows. So here you got the crown of thorns. And then Jesus is finally crucified on the cross. And first of all, the cross is formed by the dark shadows. Let me use another color here. The dark shadows here is crossed by the stripe shadow. So this is the crossing point, so to say. That makes up the cross. So that's here Jesus is crucified. And let me see here. And then after the crucifixion, Jesus is buried in a tomb. And we already know the tomb. The tomb is inside the dark shadows here. The tomb in the cave or whatever. But he's lying here inside the tomb. And then there is a great earthquake, and the angel of the Lord descends from heaven and overturned the stone from the entrance to the cave. And first of all angels and the Lord and stuff like that is based on the dragon head here, or the above the spirit, so to speak. But that's not important for this video. What is important is the stone in front of the opening. And here we got the opening. And here we got the stone, the overturned stone, so Jesus can get out. And I did tell that this is also the earthquake here. The stripe shadow is the earthquake. And just to go back to this angel, who, let me see, the earthquake and the angel, it's very important because, almost all depictions of angels is connected to the kneeling posture. And the kneeling posture is here. This is the foot and the knee here. And then we got another foot here. I'll make another video about that, but that's the kneeling angel. So I'll leave it here for now. And we know that the stone in front of the cave entrance is here. Great. So then we reached the resurrection from the cave. And a lot of female or a couple of female eyewitnesses, see this. And the woman, again, is the female posture here. That's the start. We're talking about women's. And this is the women who are represented just outside the cave. I see here, yeah. And then we got the other women's, because this is the single woman, but when you got more women's, the striped shadow represent the crowd. So this is the crowd of women, or more than one woman, witnessing the Jesus ascending to the heavens, or get out of the cave. Okay, and what we got here, the female eyewitnesses is done. Yeah, and now we got into the juicy stuff, because Jesus ascends to heaven around 40 days after Easter, at the end of May, where the Milky Way slowly begins to tilt and bringing the light from the disk down with it below or to the horizon. And this, and when we measure the Milky Way, it's always right before sunset, because otherwise, it will make no sense. The Milky Way is going up and down every day. But when you measure it from just before sunrise, you got the exact points for Jesus' birth and his ascension. So 40 days after Easter, he's going up. And Jesus ascends to heaven is when the disk stands at the tallest point in the yearly cycle, so to speak. That's the best way to explain it. Shortly after the summer solstice, we hit John the Baptist Day, the birth of John the Baptist. From this moment, when the Milky Way is standing tall and start tilting over, John the Baptist takes over Jesus' role as the disk light, until the disk completely disappears behind the sun around the end of August, where John the Baptist gets his head, the disk, cut off. So when the Milky Way center, disappear behind the sun, John get his head cut off. And that's also why we say that John the Baptist is the forerunner for Jesus. And we hear this famous phrase that he, Jesus, must increase, but I, John, must decrease. Yes, Jesus must go up and John must go down, of course. The disk is going up and the disk is going down. So, and note that this is the Milky Way position in the Mediterranean region, of course. And since the Bible was written, things have moved a little bit. So now it's not in around summer solstice anymore. Now it moved a little bit, but it's almost the same. And then Saint John the Baptist Day is celebrated with bonfires in Denmark or in the northern countries. We fire, Sankt Hans, the birthday of John the Baptist, with bonfires. And this is a symbol of the red light of the disk standing like a bonfire on the horizon. And let me explain here, because right now you see the Milky Way in the horizontal, But when it's vertical, it stands like this. And the disc here is standing on the horizon, and then you got a huge bonfire here. So that's why you lit up the fire, in the middle of the night. It has nothing to do with the summer solstice or the physical sun to do. We are just, saying, good, have a nice trip down. We're gonna miss you. And when you disappear behind the sun, we'll miss you anymore. And when we reach the Christmas, we will be very happy because then the light of the world come back to us. And that's exactly what I'm about to talk about, the rebirth of Christ. It all starts over when the light of the world escapes the light of the sun at Christmas morning. So now we encircle the story and it all starts over. Great. So just to sum up, Jesus is the disc disc light from the period of Christmas to a little before John the Baptist take over at summer solstice. And then John, take the down trip until the disc disappears behind the sun, and then everybody is sad until next Christmas. And by the way, Halloween also plays a role into this, but not in the Christian terms, but in the old Druid terms from the old Celtic tradition. I'll make another video about that. Okay, let's get into some other key features, because now we understand what Jesus is and where he comes from and where he goes and all that. But Jesus is also baptized in the Jordan River. And let me read from the text here or some sum-ups. As soon Jesus was baptized, the heavens were opened unto him, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and lighting upon him. First of all, the Jordan River, I'll take a blue color here. The Jordan River is the striped shadow here, the flesh of Jesus, of course. And Jordan means to flow down. Yes, it's exactly what it means, because the Spirit here has to flow down into the mortal world. So Jordan is the bridge between the mortal and the divine worlds. And that's the role the striped shadow always plays. It's the disciples giving the message of God or Jesus to humankind, and in Norse mythology it's the rainbow bridge, and I can go on. So this is the Jordan River, and that's the Milky Way has given the name to the real Jordan River down there. And of course, Jesus lying in the water is the striped shadow and the disc here, and he's very happy, as you can see, because in the moment he got baptized by the hand of John the Baptist. The heaven, of course, is there's opening for him. Is of course the heaven here, the Spirit, the understanding, the wisdom. And the Spirit of God is also this blue-white area above the disc, because it's both plays the role as the lake and the sea, but also the role as pure spirit, unmanifested spirit, so to speak. And the dove is the entire Milky Way center, with the branch in the beak. Not in this scene, but in Noah's Ark, for example. So you can almost see it here. You got the wings of the dove. And then you got this is the white head of the dog, and the beak is like the striped shadow here. So this is the dove. And then you think, oh, it's not a white dove, it's a black dove. No, it's white because it's like the white bull. Um, this area, the lightened up area is used to define the color because all this is in shadow over here. So this is the dove above his head. And then a voice from heaven saying, "This is my beloved Son." Oh yeah, the voice of God himself. So here is the voice coming out of the mouth of God, speaking here. And maybe he's got a tongue in here. So, this is my Son, or my beloved Son. So this is God speaking, or the voice from heaven. And then we got the blood of Christ. And I think I mentioned it before, but the blood of Christ is of course the golden or red light in the Milky Way center running through this striped shadow here, the flesh, into the mortal world, or the wine. And while we are there, wine and bread, the breath, this is the bread, and the red part is the wine. And then we got to something very exciting, because Jesus is hanging on the cross is actually visual by the naked eye when you look up there. And I'm not sure if they used it, but it's used for many other myths, and it really looks like Jesus hanging there. And I'll see if I can find I'll take it step by step here. Jesus hanging on the cross is visible when the Milky Way is standing vertical. Okay. And I can say that this is the horizon here. His crossed legs are the silvery shadow, the female posture. So here we got his crossed legs. And it's a little longer than normal. Here he's standing with his legs. And his body is the area around this area, of course. And his have like a dropping head like this, hanging, which can be seen in the dark shadow here. His head is here, and his beard. But I'll give you a picture just in a second here. Let me see where I can find it. Here, I just have to adjust it a little bit. Let me see if I can find it down here. Yeah. Can you see here? Yeah. Oh, it's small. Okay, but let me paint it up so you understand. Here we got let me draw. You can see his feet are like here. And here you got he's hanging like here. And then his head is up here. Oh my God, I need a smaller, maybe I can make a smaller detail here. This is his mouth, his nose is here, eyes are here. And here we got his hair. And his beard is going down here. And he got no arms. But he's hanging on the crossing point above the disc. try to see if you can find it. He's hanging with the crossed legs on the cross, of course. And let me try to zoom in just a little bit. I don't know if this helps. Here you can maybe see it. Okay, otherwise try to write a description below if you want to have the image. But here you see him in the real life. And by the way, Jesus is one of the persons you can see, and the other ones is all the ladies from especially Greek mythology. Okay, let's move on here. We got the visual Jesus, and then, yeah, this is also exciting, because Jesus is the Alpha and Omega. And let's find Alpha and Omega. I don't know if you know how the symbols looks like, but I'll draw them for you here. So here. The Alpha and Omega symbols is made with inspiration of the dark shadows in the Milky Way center, of course. So let me draw them here quick. The Alpha is the pyramid shape here in the Milky Way, with the striped shadow as the horizontal bar in the A. Oh, sorry. So I'll make it here. And then we got the Omega. I'll make it in green. This is also the outline of the shadows in the Milky Way here. So here you got Alpha and Omega. And of course, Jesus is the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and ending of everything, from the Greek philosophy. Okay, and just before I finish this video, I'll go through the etymology of the word Christ or Messiah, because it means the anointed one, which is a direct metaphor for the light of the disk, the oil. This is the anointed one, in which the body is smeared. And this is a plagiarism taken directly from the embalming of the Osiris mummy in Egyptian mythology. So this is a copycat from ancient Egypt. So your Christ is also Osiris from ancient Egypt. And you can go see my Osiris video to go deeper into the details. And of course, Jesus finally dies when he turns 33. The mystical number 33. 33 is a metaphor for the connection between spirit and the mortal world. We could call it like the Trinity on earth and the Trinity in heaven. And no, it has nothing to do with Israel or anything. It's way older than that. But you can check out my number 33 video to learn more about the passage between heaven and earth, the 3 steps in each direction, where Jesus, of course, is walking every year. Okay, and to finish it all off, you know, I don't care what people interpret of all the stories. You know, I'm not religious, but I have to say one thing, because I have read and understand all the ancient myths and creation stories. And I just have one thing to say, that Jesus, you know, is not a person out there or an entity you have to worship, because Jesus is an allegory of manifested spirit, the spirit within you. You are Jesus. Okay? Capiche? So you have to worship yourself and get your mind up here instead of that dogma you live in. So get out of the dogma and into wisdom. Old Neo-Pythagorean philosophy turned into dogmas in the New Testament, and Jesus as the front runner. Okay, that's all for now, folks. I hope you enjoyed, and if you have got any questions, write below and I'll answer the best I can. And until my next video, take care and see ya. Bye.